Well, there's been a compromise, and so it's a true compromise because both sides left a little bit unhappy. And so on this stablecoin rewards issue in particular, we met the asks of the bank lobby and the Senate, and they said they don't want to have any rewards paid on idle balances. And so we came up with this compromise or concession that rewards could be paid as long as there was some sort of material activity on the account, like a payment or a trade that had taken place. And I've got to give a lot of credit to Senators Brooks and Tillis and their staff who worked tirelessly on this to bring both sides together and reach this compromise. I think it's in the best place that we've seen so far, and the other issues that I brought up in January have also been resolved. And so
the fight over crypto regulation in the United States just hit a critical breaking point. Overnight, bipartisan negotiations around the Clarity Act reportedly collapsed after senators failed to reach a final agreement on two explosive issues: ethics rules tied to the first family and protections for non-custodial crypto developers. And now, with the Senate Banking Committee markup scheduled for today at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Washington is heading into what could become one of the most important political battles the crypto industry has ever seen. Even more dramatic, Senator Cynthia Lummis says lawmakers already agree on 99% of the bill, yet that final 1% could determine whether the United States finally creates a legal framework for digital assets, or whether the entire process stalls right before the finish line. Reports now suggest the markup could move forward on partisan lines, while Senator Elizabeth Warren and anti-crypto lawmakers continue pushing aggressively against the legislation. At the same time, major Wall Street firms and institutions are lining up behind the bill. Fidelity, which manages roughly $7 trillion in assets, has officially backed the Clarity Act, while Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong says the legislation is now closer than ever. Prediction markets are still only giving the bill around a 60 to 70% chance of becoming law by 2026. And that tells you everything you need to know. Momentum is building fast, but this fight is far from over. The Senate floor battle, the 60-vote filibuster threshold, and the growing political tension heading into the midterms could still derail the entire thing at any moment. So in today's video, we're breaking down everything happening behind the scenes in Washington, the latest comments from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, why Arthur Hayes says he actually hopes the Clarity Act gets vetoed, and finally, an incredible new interview from Changpeng Zhao, better known as CZ, where he reveals how selling his apartment for Bitcoin eventually turned into a fortune worth more than $100 million. Make sure to stick around until the end because this story keeps getting crazier. And if you enjoy these kinds of macro and crypto breakdowns, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss the next major update. The Clarity Act is no longer just another crypto bill floating around Congress. It has become a full-scale political and financial showdown over who controls the future of digital assets in America. According to multiple reports, negotiations made meaningful progress on ethics concerns involving top government officials and their families. But at the last minute, disagreements surrounding the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act, specifically protections for non-custodial software developers, reportedly blew up the deal before senators could finalize a bipartisan compromise. And despite all the headlines celebrating progress, there are still enormous obstacles ahead. Even if the Senate Banking Committee advances the bill today, the real war begins on the Senate floor. The legislation would still need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster, meaning Republicans would likely need support from at least 7 Democrats. That is where lawmakers like Elizabeth Warren could become even more aggressive in trying to stop or delay the process. Timing also matters here, especially with midterm season just around the corner. And that uncertainty is exactly what Maria Bartiromo pushed Brian Armstrong on during his latest interview, asking what happens next if the Banking Committee advances the bill, and whether growing conflict of interest concerns tied to President Trump and his family could ultimately complicate a final Senate vote.
There are other obstacles here, and I wonder what the Senate Agriculture Committee has to say about all of this. They'll weigh in as well, correct?
That's correct. There's a role here for both Senate Banking and Senate Ag. Senate Ag already had their markup earlier this year, and it did pass. Now, if the Senate Banking Committee goes through later this week, then it goes to the full Senate floor. And that's what we're hoping to have happen in the coming months.
What about these issues around conflict of interest? Because what I'm reading is that Senate Democrats, like Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, are unlikely to back the bill unless it includes something about preventing top government officials and their families, including President Trump, from being involved in the crypto business, Brian.
Yeah, so I know that that's something that members of the Senate are working on. You know, this is not our issue. We're trying, frankly, to kind of stay out of it because it's just above our pay grade. My sense is that there's been so much time invested by the Senate and their staff on this issue. They're not going to let this conflict or ethics issue hold up the bill at this point, but they do need to come together and find some sort of solution in collaboration with the White House. So it's not, we're trying to stay out of it, but I do hope that that gets resolved to make sure that a full Senate vote can happen and get this on the president's desk.
Exactly, because I can't see the president signing this into law under that scenario, with Kirsten Gillibrand talking specifically about the president and his family.
Yeah, well, my hope is there's a reasonable compromise to be made here, and I know there's active conversations going on, so we'll do what we can to help, but it's not our specific issue.
Retail traders buy crypto on exchanges. Serious investors think about structure. iTrustCapital's Crypto IRA lets your gains grow without capital gains gutting your profits. Their premium custody holds assets off exchange with institutional-grade security, and their treasury accounts give businesses and trusts crypto exposure with proper reporting and compliance. Same assets, completely different level of protection, 24/7 trading, no monthly fees, real U.S. customer support, $100 bonus when you fund through the link below. Price matters. How you hold it matters more. From Armstrong's comments, you can clearly see the balancing act happening right now. On one side, crypto companies desperately want regulatory clarity after years of uncertainty, lawsuits, and hostile enforcement actions. But on the other side, lawmakers are now trying to attach broader political and ethical concerns to the legislation itself. Armstrong repeatedly avoids getting dragged into the politics, emphasizing that Coinbase wants to stay focused on the framework for digital assets rather than becoming involved in battles surrounding the White House or individual politicians. But while Armstrong argues the industry needs rules to move forward, not everyone in crypto agrees with that vision. In fact, some of the earliest Bitcoin believers think the entire push for institutional regulation completely misses the point of why crypto was created in the first place, and nobody represents that side of the debate more aggressively than former BitMEX CEO Arthur Hayes.
I went on stage in Consensus in Miami and I said, we don't need no regulations, right? Who cares? Clarity Act, I hope Trump vetoes it if it ever gets to his desk. Don't need any of these regulations. If Bitcoin and crypto needed regulations to survive, we wouldn't be worth a dime. Because what's the point? If you're just going to have another Fugazi derivative that sits on some member of the financial system's balance sheet, we got that. We don't need that. What's the point? And I think people miss this distinction. The reason why banks want to offer this product to their clients is because the product does something for its client. It's a non-correlated asset that's done very, very well in inflationary environments and environments when lots of fiat has been created. Obviously, their clients want to have some of that, and the bank is in the business of making fees and providing the product that their clients want. So sure, they want to onboard crypto, and they should be allowed to do that. But other than that, like, why are we bending over backwards to try to institutionalize Bitcoin? You're essentially just saying what you've actually built for the last 15 years is a zero, and we just want to have another piece of shit financial product that's going to go to zero when some small shitty bank goes under. I mean, I hope it doesn't pass. But again, hats off to Brian Armstrong. He is a CEO of a publicly listed centralized crypto company, and he's doing everything in his power to make his shareholders money, and he should be doing that. And that does not mean that he has the best interests of the broader crypto ecosystem at heart. You have to understand what his role is and what he's trying to do.
Fiduciary duty to his shareholders.
Yeah, that's his job, right? So, why do you think that he would ever have the interest of the average Bitcoiner or the average open source developer in his mind? If they converge, great. But if they don't, then sure, he's going to go his own way.
Arthur Hayes' argument cuts directly to the philosophical divide now emerging inside crypto itself. One side believes institutional adoption, Wall Street participation, and federal regulation are necessary for mass adoption and long-term growth. The other side believes crypto's entire purpose was to exist outside traditional financial systems, not become another product sitting on bank balance sheets or wrapped into heavily regulated financial structures. And regardless of where viewers stand on the issue, one thing is becoming undeniable: crypto is no longer operating on the fringe of finance. The fact that senators, banks, billion-dollar asset managers, and former exchange CEOs are all fighting publicly over this legislation shows just how much the industry has evolved over the last decade. But whether the Clarity Act ultimately passes or fails, this battle is clearly far from over. We'll continue covering every major development in upcoming videos, so let us know down in the comments. Do you think the Clarity Act eventually becomes law, or does politics stop it before it reaches the finish line? And while Washington battles over the future of crypto regulation, Binance founder CZ is reminding people why so many early believers were willing to take massive risks on Bitcoin long before Wall Street or politicians took it seriously. He lays it bare in a recent discussion with Patrick Bet-David, sharing how he sold his home to go all in on Bitcoin in 2013.
I started learning about Bitcoin in 2013, right? And at the time, I was like, 36, 37? And then I was like, okay, this is the future technology. This is bigger than the internet. And when the internet was happening, I was too young. So I was at 36, 37-ish. I wasn't going to let this opportunity pass by. So I said, look, I just got to get involved in this new technology field. I don't know what I'm going to do first. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'm going to buy Bitcoins first. So I sold my house, sold my apartment, and bought Bitcoin. So that was like pretty clear to me. That was a very long-term conviction.
Is this a $900,000 apartment?
Yes, this is a $900,000 apartment.
And when you bought it at the time, what was the average price of Bitcoin?
Average price I got in was about 600. I bought it. I got payments in installments, right? So I bought it at 800, 600, 400. So average to us.
So if we do 900,000 divided by 600 times 81,000, you're looking at $121 million, give or take.
Something, yeah, about 100 million.
Selling a $900,000 apartment turned into $121 million.
Yeah.
The average person listening to this thinks that's crazy. But what made you say this is what I'm going to be doing? That's a pretty bold decision to make. That's a big risk to make.
Well, number one is I saw the clear future of the technology. I don't know what it's going to be like exactly, but I know it's going to grow. What
made you say that? What made you? Is it a paper? Is it a white paper you read? Is it someone's paper you read? Or
back then there was much less materials about it. There was a white paper that I read. There was a forum called bitcointalk.org that I spent a lot of time on. And then going to conferences, meeting the people, the community made a huge difference. And also doing the first transaction with Bitcoin, when you install your own Bitcoin wallet and you realize, well, wait a second, this is a network I can send money to anyone, a full control. There's no bank involved. There's no other fees involved. It's instantaneous. Once you realize that, it's like, this is a technology for the future. Not only did I just sell the apartment, I actually quit my job to look for a new job in this industry, right? So most people will say like, no, those two combined are pretty high risk. But I think as I detailed in the book, risk is not based on the action. It's based on your individual circumstance. For me, my risk tolerances at the time was high because I know I can get a job. If like Bitcoin went to zero, I can get a job in a bank.
Got it.
I can get a job on Wall Street again.
CZ's story is one of the clearest examples of conviction the crypto industry has ever seen. Imagine selling a nearly $1 million apartment, quitting your job, and putting everything into Bitcoin when most people still thought the technology was a joke. At the time, Bitcoin was trading around a few $100s, there were barely any educational resources available, and almost nobody outside small online forums understood what decentralized money could eventually become. But CZ says once he experienced sending value across the Bitcoin network without a bank involved, the future became obvious to him. What's even more important is the mindset behind the decision. CZ explains that risk depends on individual circumstances. To most people, selling your home to buy Bitcoin sounds reckless. But from his perspective, the opportunity was simply too large to ignore. And looking back now, that single decision reportedly turned a $900,000 apartment into well over $100 million in Bitcoin value over time. Whether you agree with that level of risk or not, Stories like this explain why so many early crypto adopters became intensely committed to the technology long before governments and institutions finally started paying attention. And now, the industry sits at another major turning point. Between the Clarity Act battle in Washington, institutions like Fidelity stepping into crypto more aggressively, and some of the biggest names in the industry openly debating the future of regulation itself, the next few months could shape the direction of digital assets for years to come. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you never miss another major crypto update. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.